Good evening. Our mission in Duncanville is to engage, equip, and empower all scholars to achieve their unique potential. We will now move to the agenda item to swear in a Board of Trustee.
All right, at this time, we'll turn it over to Miss Allie.
I missed that name.
Sorry, mic wasn't on. Can everyone hear me? All right, thank you. If you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the Office of Board of Trustees, Place 3, of Duncanville ISD, of the state of Texas, and will to the best of my abilities preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and this state. So help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you, Allie, as you run out the door. Now we will move into closed session. Well, we're obviously back from closed session, and we will continue with our agenda items. We'll now move to opening ceremonies. Trustee Veracruz will lead us in prayer, and Trustee Fahey will lead us in the pledge of the flag.
Good evening, everyone. Please join me for a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you as we gather together to recognize that you are a God of all times. You are a God of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Lord, we lift up the educators, administrators, leadership team, maintenance teams, and Board of Aid. Provide them strength, Lord, and wisdom in their daily meetings. Grant those in authority over the students wisdom, revelation, knowledge, and understanding in everything they do. Make them a vessel to speak life over our students. We pray for favor and protection over all campuses and grant the students and educators a desire to achieve academic success. In his mighty name, amen.
Amen.
Please stand for our pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
We'll move on to the superintendent's report. You're up now, Dr. Smith.
All right, thank you, President McNeely. I have the following items to report to the board this evening. Again, good evening, board members and those that are here in attendance. The first item that I'd like to report on is just an update on the podcast that we are doing for our district. It's a part of our marketing and branding. We want to be able to tell our story so that those out there know about Duncanville ISD and know about the great program. So we're marketing to potential employers, but also parents who are thinking about what options they want for their students. And so on the most recent podcast, we highlighted the Charles Acton Leadership Academy and the principal, Ms. Jessica Linwood, and she spoke about the leadership program and all the great works that are going on there at the Leadership Academy. And we've had several podcasts where we are highlighting different employees in the school district, our Teachers of the Year, and they had an opportunity to just really share in a very transparent way what it means to be an educator in Duncanville ISD. And so far, we've gotten rave reviews, a lot of followers, and we're hoping that it's getting some traction for us in just shining the light on Duncanville ISD. And so we have a few more that are coming out, and looking forward to continuing to highlight our employees and the good things that they're doing in the district. The next item that I had is just to highlight for you the PACE graduation, and in particular the nursing aid program. I know we had a few of our board members that were able to attend and gave me feedback as well. But PACE graduated one of their largest classes last month. They had 39 graduates. And for the first time, we had 10 students who participated in the school's first cohort for the Certified Nurse Assistant Program. And 7 out of 10 of those students completed the program. They earned their certification. What that means is that now they have the qualifications to work as a nurse assistant. So they are not only have graduated, completed the requirements to graduate from high school, but now they can go in and they can get a job, and they can earn a living, and they can continue to, and that training that they're getting as a nurse assistant, if they choose to stay in the medical field, only helps build their profile for more credentialing that will allow them to do more. So it's changed the lives. It's been a game changer, so to speak, for our students, and so we are very, very proud of the work that they did to accomplish that. The next item I have is about our choir program. As you know, we have a nationally recognized program. They've added another award to their extensive list of accolades. Duncanville High School has been named a 2022 Grammy Signature School for the choir's hard work, excellence, and basically their consistent high achievement. And so this honor validates the long days and sacrifices and trips that they've made all across the country, really performing for many different audiences. And so in addition to the Grammy Award, the choir will also be presented with a $5,000 grant as a result of winning this award. So it will go toward continuing to further the legacy. Mr. Cannon, the choir director, is moving on to another school district, but the foundation has already been set in Duncanville, and so we're going to continue that legacy moving forward, and just very proud of the work that they have done. The next item is just an update on our summer camps and the professional development that's going on. Learning never stops, both for our students and adults. I was so proud last week we had what we call Duncanville U, which was just an opportunity to provide professional development for our staff. This is during the summer, and so they were not required to attend, but it was very well attended. Over 200 plus staff members coming, using their personal time this summer to really improve their skills and sharpen their skills and get better and get motivated so that they could be prepared when we come back with our students in late July, early August. And so this was a great opportunity. We had speakers from across the district. We heard from Michael Bonner, who is a young man who is a part of the Ron Clark Academy, and so got a lot of positive feedback regarding his session. And then our Epic Summer Enrichment Camps are going on all across the district. Our students are engaged in these learning activities. This is an opportunity to enrich and improve the experiences of our students. And so there's a lot of fun things happening, but not just fun things. Students are actually learning. And so we are really excited about that, and our summer learning will continue through the remaining parts of this month as well as on into July. So very excited about that. The next item I have, obviously, starting a new school year very quickly. It'll be here before you know it. We've put a team together, and we've already started to identify what our theme is going to be next year. Is going to be DVille All In. The whole purpose of that theme is really just to signify how important unity is. It was the unity and togetherness that got us through the last couple of years. It'll be the unity and togetherness that gets us back to the level that we all expect here in Duncanville. And so we're going to be getting prepared for convocation. Be here before you know it, August 3rd. So our team already is preparing for this event. It's going to be exceptional. You don't want to miss it. You want to take part in that. We've got some different things going on that definitely is a stretch for me, but I'm on the team, so we'll see how all that goes. I'm looking forward to how that works. You know, we've had guest speakers before, and you know, we had a couple blips, so hopefully things will go well. Yeah, it'll be in Sandra Meadows Arena, so that's going to be nice. Yes, so I'm really excited about that. And then lastly, you know, we just finished graduation, have a short video. Board, I want to thank all of you for taking your time to be there and participate in graduation. It was an awesome event. It was very well attended. You know, our students did a good job of honoring the moment that we all wanted them to share in. And so just a few graduation facts. The class of 2022 had about 950 seniors, $23.2 million in scholarships, 59 students graduated with an associate's degree. We had more than 1,000 industry-based certifications, which when we talk about the certifications and what that means, it credentials those students to be able to go into the workforce and start working. And 95% of our students completed the Dallas County Promise Pledge, which was just completing the paperwork and application process to get into college. And so it was a great class, was a great honor. I want to end the superintendent's report by sharing just a really quick video from that evening. So if you can roll the video. And at the conclusion of the video, that concludes the superintendent's report. To the class of 2022, today is your day. It is so good to see our students, our graduates, our families, their parents, our school board, the administration. We've assembled here to celebrate the class of 2022. We are so proud of you and your journey and all that you accomplished.
Now, I know none of our paths through this trip have been a straight one, and at times we may have felt lost, scared, and unmotivated to be our best, but we've made it. Now, as graduating high schoolers, we've been granted with one of the most beautiful gifts of all. A clean slate, a new beginning, a blank canvas just waiting to let our creativity and legacy soar. Now is our time to take on the world and to find and pursue our passions. It may be difficult for one to believe that we can achieve greatness because at times we may just feel small and mediocre. But always remember that the opportunity to achieve greatness is always within our grasp. Class of 2022, it's been a splendid ride, and I truly wish you all the best. Go make your mark. Thank you.
We're here at Globe Life Field to celebrate your achievement. As we come here tonight, I will remind you of who you are. You are students that overcame a pandemic. You're students that overcame the cancellation of school, of classes, but yet you still made it. Your resiliency is why you're here to celebrate tonight. I want to remind you that you're from the city of champions. You're from Duncanville, so it's important for you to always know that when you face adversity or hard time, that you are a Panther and you are a champion. So congratulations, and tonight's your night. Thank you.
All in all, as a class, we have spent about 720 days in the past 4 years at Duncanville High School to get to this moment. We all have blueprints of how our lives are going to turn out after today. While what is to come can be terrifying, trust that as long as we put in the necessary work, our lives will flourish into what they were designed to be. Each and every one of us have worked incredibly hard to get to this point in our lives. And I know for me, it all went by too fast. So I want us all to take a moment to look around and take it all in. Life will never feel the way that it does right now. This is a turning point for us. Today, we go forward to be who we are and follow our own individual paths to success. Thank you to the entire class of 2022 for making my high school experience better than I could have ever imagined.
Good evening, class of 2022. Destination graduation is finally here. You have arrived. We are so excited to see you here tonight, and we are super proud of the journey that you've had this year and previous years before. We wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors.
Being in this fine facility, getting an opportunity to see you make this one step in your life that's going to transition you to future paths. So To the class of 2022, we say congratulations, Godspeed, and good luck. Class of 2022, you are ready for the next phase of your life. Your graduation is not the end, it's the beginning. I know that you will make all of us so proud. And now, on behalf of the Duncanville Independent School District Board of Trustees, and by the authority granted to me by the Texas Education Agency, I accept the class of 2022. It is my honor to certify that they are eligible for participation in this ceremony.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. We'll move on now. I'll turn the meeting over to Vice President Cassandra Phillips for board report.
Thank you, President McNeely. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all, thank our board for their vote along with the 10 other boards that voted to elect me to the Dallas Central Appraisal District as the representative for the Dallas County Suburban School Districts. I believe it's necessary to provide reports and updates, if you will, after each board meeting. So that's what I'm doing today. It's just going to be a very short report based on our last meeting at the board. The appraisal review board process began Monday, April 18th, 2022. And as of June 7th, 2022, DCAD, Dallas Central Appraisal District, has received 190,580 protests. Hearings will end on July 19th in preparation for the certification, which is going to take place on the 25th of July. And I just want to say property taxes are very important to school districts. So for those listening, watching the video, we appreciate every property owner for doing their part because it does take a village. So we definitely wanted to, that's just my report. Thank you for allowing me to do that report, President McNeely.
Amen. Okay, we'll continue with Tara Richard.
All right. Good evening, President McNeely, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. So donations this month, we had several come in. I wanted to specifically point out the one presented to Pace High School because that group donated actually clothing, business professional clothing for our graduates as they continue to pursue career opportunities, college opportunities. So there was a clothing donation that really was a big part of that in addition to monetary. But any donation that's provided to our school district obviously is a great asset. It goes to our kids and it goes to the giving that we all do on a daily basis. So just wanted to recognize these donations that came in over the past month. All right, and then I'll continue with a special recognition. I'd like to call up Mr. Dedrick Williams. Mr. Williams. I'll let Mr. Williams work his way up here. Mr. Williams is absolutely the face and voice of Duncanville High School in so many ways. He was in the graduation video multiple times. If you're at any sporting event, you have seen him do his work. You've heard how he really celebrates our kids in our schools. He brings a spirit and pride to what he does. And so he receives a lot of accolades and recognition for what he does there on a daily basis. But it's not just us celebrating him. It's nice when we can tell him how much we appreciate him. But it's really great when you hear others step in and pile on and add to those accolades also. So earlier this year, Mr. Williams received the special honor of becoming the State Conference District Advisor of the Year for Texas Association of Student Councils. So we want to congratulate you on that honor. And if you don't know the work that Mr. Williams does with our students and the Student Council in particular, those kids are out there in our community constantly stepping up, and they are leaders in our schools, and they're leaders because of the leadership that you show our students and how you step in front and you lead by example on a consistent basis. One thing that I wanted to do was give Mr. Williams a chance to talk about the student council efforts that are coming in, how our students will be representing the district as a whole moving forward. So I want to give him just a quick moment to do so.
Thank you. Dr. Smith and the board, thank you for this opportunity. As far as, excuse me, as far as student council goes, my goal is always to serve. And that's what I try to impress upon my students, that if we're not serving, we're not working. We have the unique opportunity this next school year that we'll be serving the Texas Association of Student Councils, which is our state board, which represents some 1,400 schools from across the state of Texas. We will be the host school for that state conference in Irving, Texas, and y'all are going to be there. You probably didn't know it, but you're going to be there. I'm going to ask you guys to come out and help and volunteer and do some of the things that will be a part of that unique and that grand opportunity. Over those 3 days, there will be some probably 4,500 student leaders from across the state of Texas. It will be a unique opportunity where we celebrate, where we educate, and where we motivate the students who are serving in this very capacity, just like my student leaders from across the state of Texas. I'm excited about it. My students are excited about it, and I look forward to just being able to share with you the success that this opportunity has provided, along with the fact that we are also serving, and just a small correction, I got that opportunity as the District 3. So District 3 is basically all of the North Texas high schools. So District 3, I represented District 3, and we also serve on that school board, or that board, as the vice president school. So we have a student representative for that, as well as the fact that we have a student representative for our state board this year. So we're going to be very busy. I'm excited about it. My wife is not, because I'm not going to be home as much as I should, but my students will be benefiting, and therefore Duncanville will be benefiting. Again, thank you for this opportunity.
Okay. Mr. Williams, before you take your seat, please. I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do for Duncanville High School. From the moment that I've arrived, you have been as consistent can be. And so it is so good to have someone. You know, we just talked about all in being our theme for next year. You are all in Team Duncanville, and the value you provide to our district is so very appreciated. So I wanted to thank you for that. Thank you, President McNeely, for giving that.
I just want to say that I've known Dedrick since he got here, and back when I used to have to, as a coach, you taught this class, he used to share his classroom with me, and he's the only one in all 30 years I taught that didn't blame my class for tearing their classroom up. But we are, as a district, I've known him and watched him and work with the kids. It's unbelievable to have him and his wife, Diane, in Duncanville School District. They are an asset that money can't buy. And I just want you to know that we really appreciate you. That's it, right? Now we're going to this hearing. Okay, we're going to conduct a public hearing to allow the public participation in the discussion of the proposed budget for the 22-23 school fiscal year for the general fund, child nutrition fund, debt service fund, and compensation plan. So, Mr. Bigby.
Good evening, President McNeely, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. I think you have a copy of this at your place, because some of it's a little harder to read. Next slide, please. This is a summary of the assumptions. We always start with, okay, these are the things we assume putting the budget together. We set it up on an ADA of 10,613 with an enrollment 11,662. That's a 91% attendance rate, which is, it's below what we typically do, but it's above what we ended with this year. So we're hopeful that we'll at least get back to 91% next year. We figured a 10% increase in taxable values, and after 190,000 appeals and of the tax rates, that's going to change. It's probably going to be higher than that. But as you know, if it goes to 80% increase, we won't get any more money out of it because we're capped. So 10% is a good number to work off of. It just may change what part is ours and what part is the state's. Beginning teacher pay is at $57,000. Teacher salary increases were 6.6% of the midpoint. That's $3.8 million. I would remind you that these are not in the budget. These are going to be paid for out of the ESSER funds, so they're not included in the budget that I'll present tonight. All other employees had a 4% midpoint increase. That's about $2.5 million. And once again, those are covered by ESSER funds, so they're not included in the budget. You approved a longevity stipend of $2,000 for employees who completed 15 years this school year, and that's a little over $500,000, and those are covered by ESSER funds, and they're not included in this budget. There's adjustments to maintain integrity for salary structure, which we've done every time there's been a salary increase. We had to change some of the steps, and we left the district health insurance contribution at $333, which is what it was last year. Next slide. General operating budget, we're estimating a tax rate of 93.29, which is going to be about a 5-cent decrease in taxes. Once again, we won't know this until July 25th when we get the actual values, and then we can calculate what the tax rate will be. You can see you began with $63 million in fund balance this year. We're estimating that we'll have a loss of a little over $5 million, and there's some explanations for that where I'll explain it to you. But we're estimating to end the year with a little over $58 million in fund balance, which is still significantly higher than what TA suggests, but it's a very comfortable fund balance. Next year's general operating, you can see we're projecting $58 million from local, almost $61 from state programs, $6 million from federal, or $124,685, $301 for revenue. That's a little over $1.5 million less than what we had last year. Once again, we're basing it on quite a few less students. Child nutrition, you can see they began with no fund balance and ending that way. Sources for their income, very little, or proportionally small amount from local funds. Those are kids that basically buy their lunch. State program, it's just very minimal. And then almost $6 million from the federal government for free and reduced lunches. Total revenue is a little over $6 million. Debt service, we're projecting a tax rate of 32 cents, which is 2 cents less than last year's, which would be a total of 7 cents reduction in tax rate. Once again, we'll get that to much closer at the end of July. Beginning fund balance in debt service was $13.5 million. We just plan on breaking even this year, so it'll still be 13. The debt payment is $17,187,000, and I'll cover this more when we get into the budget book, but it's about $1 million less than what our payment was this year. If you remember, we refunded quite a few bonds during the year, and it actually dropped that rate about $1 million for this year. So that was a good deal. And the way interest rates are going, it was a really good deal to do it when we did it, because we wouldn't have had near as much savings. Total budget, $148 million for the year, budgeted revenue, tax rate of 125.29 estimated. Okay, next slide. You can see where the revenue comes from. The orange is state, the blue is local, and the gray is federal revenue. So you can see that we're keep creeping closer and closer to where we're going to put in more from the local side than the state does, and that's their intention. Next slide. A little hard to read. It's got all the expenditures. The expenditure totals match the revenue totals that you saw 2 slides ago. You can see that we're projecting to not add to fund balance in any of the funds by the end of the year, but even still, the general fund will be almost 47% of the budget. child nutrition, none, and almost 79% of the debt service will be the amount of the fund balance at the end of next year. So that one's in extremely good shape. Altogether, it's 48% of the budgeted money for next year. Those numbers are very close to what we had last year in all of the functions. Okay, next slide. So it breaks down. Instruction related, 72.5. That was 72.4 last year, so it stayed pretty stable. Support groups, 15.9. Campus administration, 6.9. And central administration, 4.7. And those numbers are just almost identical to what they were last year. Okay, next slide. Here's the dollar figures broken down by expenditure by object. The 6100s, which are payroll expenses, you can see the bulk of it is 106,855, and the 6100, 6200, which are contracted services, almost $8 million there. Supplies, 5.7 million. Other expenses, I know that sounds like a dodge, but that's fees, any kind of travel. They're all grouped into that. Insurance costs are in there. That's 6400s, that's $3.7 million. Very little capital outlay budgeted, and that's a total of 124,685 is 301 in expenditures by object. Okay. You can see how the breakout, 86% we spend on people. 6,200 contracted services is 6.4%. Supplies, 4.6%. Other expenses, 3%, and 0.3% for capital outlay. Okay, next slide. This is where we ended fund balance at the beginning of this year in the general fund was 63.8. Revenues this year we're projecting at 122 million. Projected expenditures 127. That shows a negative $5,040,000. And once again, there's the fund balance that I told you earlier. That was going to be, once again, the auditors are here, and once they audit, those numbers will be exact. But that's the best guess we have right now. On the debt service side, you can see we're going to end up with 13 million in fund balance at the end of this year, and that's not bad when you have a $17 million debt service bill. So, okay, next slide. This is how all that breaks down. If you remember, we spent $4 million, and these are just round numbers, on the Teaching and Learning Center, finishing that up. We did half of it with the TRE funds, and we did half of it out of fund balance. Food service was $1.6 million negative last year by law. They can't be, since it's a federal program, so we have to make that up out of the general fund. So we moved $1.6 million into food service so that they were back to zero. And if you remember, we kept everybody working all year when things were so slow and we didn't have kids, and that's been your practice, and we continued that this year, and that's part of the reason for that number being that high. Technology, over here $1 million. I loaned him the money. He actually has a grant to cover it, but we had to buy the equipment first and then get reimbursed from the grant. So he ordered $1 million or close to $1 million worth of hardware, and of course we don't have it yet. So until it comes in, we can't get reimbursed. So that'll carry over to next year. We should get that $1 million back. But right now it's going to show up as a negative. So, revenue loss, we talked about how much revenue we were going to lose. That's about $4 million. So it's a total of $10,660 is what we're projecting less revenue and expenditures for next year. About 5.6 of that I feel like we're going to absorb in the budget. And a lot of that's because we weren't able to hire people in a lot of positions, so there's a whole lot of that money that'll come back in. So rather than being 10 million behind, I think probably 5.6 million of that will be absorbed in the budget. So that leaves a little over $5 million that's going to impact fund balance. Once again, these aren't audited numbers, but hopefully they'll be pretty close. But we knew going in with the TLC and some of those things that we were going to have some expenditures above and beyond what we typically do. What we didn't really count on was ADA taking a dive like it did. Okay, next slide. As far as the hearing, that's the presentation that I have. Be happy to entertain any questions you have or whatever the public might have.
Any questions? Questions? Are there any public comments on the budget? Don't all run down here at once. Okay, we do not have any public comments. The hearing has ended, and we will now move on to communication from citizens to discuss pending agenda items before the board. Nobody on that one? Okay. We will now move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
President McNeely, I'd like to make a motion that we move consent agenda item, I'm sorry, action agenda items 9B, D, and E and F. Is that right? I'm sorry, we're tabling D.
We're tabling D.
So, okay, my motion is that we're going to move action agenda items B, E, and F, and table D.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Now, is there any questions on the consent agenda before we vote on it? Jackie? Where's my sergeant? Just had one question.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
So I have a question regarding the security cameras.
Yes, ma'am.
So what is our schedule for receipt of those? Should we approve the item tonight?
We are shooting for November. That's, fortunately, the cameras are part of the CHIPS, that's going on with the country, or actually the world. So as soon as we get those ordered, we're looking for November as the time frame when the process will start. Now, once the completion of the cameras, once everything is totally completed, it might take up to pretty much the whole school year for it to be completed. It's a big project. It's very big. School would be going on, of course. So once the time frame it starts, hopefully November is what we're thinking, once we have everything coming in. But it should take up to a year before everything's completed.
Okay, so when you say when everything is completed, are you talking about the second phase as well? Or
Just the first phase. So the first phase is going to be the high school and Reed Middle School. With the total amount of cameras that we have at the high school as well as Reed, it'd just be the first phase, ma'am.
okay, and that's November or the end of the school year?
Starting to be hopefully November, and then it may be the end of the school year. It's hard to tell at this point. Yes, ma'am.
That's right. We've got a supply chain issue.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's hard to tell at this point. So we're hopeful. We're hopeful. Obviously, the sooner the better. But the time of completion, once the items are received, at that point, it's very. I'd like to give you a definitive answer, but that's about about the time frame.
Well, we appreciate the fact that the district does have a security plan.
Absolutely.
And that we are diligently looking into it to identify everything we could possibly do.
Yes, ma'am.
Keep our kids safe. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you for your questions.
Any other questions on the consent agenda?
I have another question.
Go right ahead.
Okay, on item E, on approval of purchase for Microsoft, I guess this is just an annual subscription that we have to,
Yes, ma'am. This is our annual agreement with Microsoft. This is how we keep all of the operating systems up to date
Yes, sir.
and secure.
okay. And then on item F, ConnectTel, what exactly do they do for us?
So they supply staff on short notice to fill high-need areas that are hard for us to fill in the educational environment for IT workers. We have a hard time recruiting people out of corporate world because our pay is not quite what corporate world has. But we can get somebody through a contract with ConnectTel, bring them in, show them the benefits to working in education, and then we convert them into full-time employees eventually. And we actually have 3 employees in the IT department right now that started as contracted employees. So it's been very successful for us to get qualified, highly skilled people into the district.
That's great. I'm glad that we've identified other avenues of getting people to fill those positions. That's all I had.
Any other questions on consent? All in favor of approving the consent agenda? Raise your right hand. Opposed? Passes. What, 5? The wonder's 5. Okay. And we'll move on to the action agenda. And let's see, which ones did we have? Okay. Consider the approval of action agenda. Start with A, approval of the budget. It's your turn again.
Again, yeah.
We just need to get you a chair up there.
If you all have this budget book, I believe it was included in your material. There's a few pages I wanted to go over with you. We can go over page by page if you like, but there's some highlights that I figured you didn't want to go through every page. Page 8, and this is what you were looking at a while ago that you couldn't see real well, the general fund revenues and expenditures. Point out that we are recommending at this point in time a 5% decrease in the tax rate for next year. Once again, until the appraisal review board gets their work done and Ms. Phillips gets them all in line, then we won't know until July 25th. But I think it'll be that or even a greater reduction than that. You can see comparing the 2 years, we're $1.6 million less than we were last year. Part of that is due to some really examining all of our vacancies and as a group deciding whether or not those needed to be filled or not. So there's been quite a bit of savings just from attrition. Certainly not doing anything with anyone, but just looking at positions and saying, okay, do we really have to have this? And it doesn't take too many people to get $1.2 million worth. So, and only 5 of those are teachers, by the way, and that was only because of the enrollment and the way it shifts. So there wasn't any just said, okay, let's get rid of a few teachers. It was based on the projected enrollments. Page 9, you'll probably notice that we do one of dollars per ADA, and our budget went down, but our dollars per ADA went up. Well, that's what happens when you lose 600 and something kids in your ADA. When you start dividing that out, then the per student spending is going to be up. So if you see that, that's why that took place. You can see the last year's budget was 11,280 for ADA, and this year we're budgeting it at 10,613. Hopefully that'll be better than that. But Page 10 is child nutrition. If you notice, that budget's $1.7 million less this year than last year. And I asked Donna about that. I said, no, that's a pretty big drop. And she reminded me that all of our students ate free this year. So we got revenue off of all of those students who are eating, and we're projecting that that's not going to happen next year. We haven't. It was a one-year deal. The federal government hasn't said they're going to continue that. So the assumption is that we won't have that next year. And she feels like that this is a good budget, and that's what she ought to be able to take in and what she'll be spending. Of course, part of that, and we may have to amend somewhere down the road if the price of food and all of those just keep going up, then we may have to do something with that later. But you know how Donna is. She's going to save every penny she can. So this was her projection. Next on page 11 is the debt service. I mentioned that it's $1.5 million less than what we budgeted last year. We always, by law, it says you can budget enough to pay your debt. And, we do that every year, and we over-collect every year. That's how that fund balance keeps growing, is that by back taxes, and the group that we have collecting back taxes for us, we generally collect more than 100% of our taxes. But we have to set the tax rate to where we're not going to do that, so we'll make sure we cover the debt. The next page I want you to look at is page 16, I'm sorry. This is the information that we get from our financial advisor. And I told you last year was about $18 million. If you look 22, 23, 16, if you'll go down through that list, you'll notice a huge drop off around 32, 33, which I'm not going to be here to talk to you about it, but it does.
I ain't gonna be here to hear you.
If you look, a lot of your neighbors, if you look at their debt schedules, this is exactly opposite of what their debt schedules look like. They built them to where property value, they hope, will keep up, and they're able to pay it. I was looking at one the other day that currently their debt service was $18 million a year. In 2 years, it goes to $42 million. And they're already setting above 30-cent tax rate, so there's no way they can pay it with a 50-cent tax rate. So while theirs is escalating, Duncanville's is declining, and that's a picture perfect of what you want your debt schedule to look like. So congratulations for being good stewards and refunding when you can, because that's just, you can put that in a textbook for what you want your debt service to look like. And that's a paid commercial. Page 39. This is the preliminary values. If you compare the preliminary values with last year's, it's up about $1 billion. Now, if you remember, we had a very small increase last year. And the appraisal district feels sure there's going to be a pretty good reduction in that. Typically, we see about a 4 to 5% reduction by the time we get our certified values. I think it'll probably be more than that this year, but we're still going to be at $6.5 or more billion worth of property value. Hopefully, you as a homeowner, yours is capped at a 10% for your homestead maximum increase, but I know it's tough, and that's why we want to be good stewards when we're setting the tax rate, to do the best we can to take care of our kids and the taxpayers. That's really what I had to cover. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Motion?
So move. No, you want to go ahead and do the full motion?
I move to approve the general, I move to approve the general fund, child nutrition fund, and debt service fund budgets for 22-23 as submitted by Dr. Ed Bigby, CFO, and as recommended by Dr. Mark Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
second? Or is that-
Second.
Okay. We've got a first and second, and I'm not gonna read it. All in favor of approving the budget? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Bigby, I want to tell you, thank you for all the, I mean, you've made 9 million presentations, but they've all been good. You break it down to where everybody can understand it, and we're really glad we've got you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're trying. Okay, here we go. All right, 9C, approval for out-of-state travel for the girls and boys basketball teams and out-of-the-country travel for the boys basketball team. Athletic Director Dwight Weaver.
Good evening. President McNeely, School Board, Dr. Smith. Last year, you allowed the teams to travel out of state. The boys team traveled to Arizona and Utah, which also allowed them to play some of the top teams in the country. As a result of that, the boys team was not only the #1 team in the state of Texas, but they ended up the #1 team in the nation. You also allowed the girls team to travel to Washington, D.C., and they also played some of the top teams in the country, therefore allowing them to get better and play some of the top teams, and they ended up number 15 in the nation. This year, I'm requesting permission for the teams to travel out of state. I will give you a small itinerary of the travel schedule. The girls basketball team has been asked by ESPN to come to Los Angeles, California in November. All fees paid by ESPN. Also, in November, the girls' teams are requesting to travel to Jacksonville, Florida, where they will be paying for travel by using the basketball shootouts, stamp raises, and fundraisers. And also, the girls' teams are requesting to travel to Washington, D.C. in December. And also, ESPN is wanting the girls' team to play in Washington, D.C. in January, in which all expenses will be paid by ESPN. And I'm also requesting travel for the boys basketball team. They will be traveling to Memphis, Tennessee in November, all expenses paid by the host. Traveling to Phoenix, Arizona, all fees paid by the host in December. Requesting travel to Salt Lake City, Utah, where all fees will be paid by the host. And we're requesting travel to Eugene, Oregon in December, in which all fees will be paid by the host. And we also requesting travel to out of the country to Nassau, Bahamas, and that is in December, and all fees will be paid by the host.
I'd like to volunteer to chaperone for board. Board needs to oversee this. I'll volunteer. So
Okay.
put my name. You're not writing it down. Write it down.
I have a good memory. By traveling and playing teams all over the country, different states, this is allowing Duncanville and for everyone else to see the talent, what we have here in Duncanville, and that we are the city of champions. And so at this time, I'm requesting travel again this year, if you would so allow it. If anyone have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
President McNeely, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the travel for students to compete out of the state and country.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimous. I tell you, you can't buy that kind of advertisement we're getting, and the programs have done excellent, and this is a great reward for them and our school district and our city, that we put our name all over everywhere, just like with the track boys, just in the Nike national championship relay team. Wow. Wow. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on now to information discussion. Preliminary district star data. Dr. Jordan.
Good evening, President McNeely, trustees, and Dr. Smith. It is my pleasure to provide you with a preliminary accountability overview. Next slide. So our accountability data is still in preliminary form and will not be finalized until the final retests are administered, which will be sometime this week. However, I wanted to take this opportunity to provide you with just an overview of 3 areas: the 2022 accountability rating labels, our 2022 state accountability measures, and then a brief overview of our 2022 preliminary spring STAR data. So we will begin with just our accountability rating labels. Both districts and campuses receive an accountability rating label. If you can think back to 2018, district received a letter label. So as a district, you received an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. And campuses received an accountability label of either met the standard or improvement required. Then in 2019, the accountability system balanced out, and both campuses and districts received a letter accountability label. We had the pandemic, so in 2020 and then 2021, campuses and districts were not rated, declared a state of disaster. So now we're in 2022. Looking at our accountability measures, our labels for this year will be a little different. At the district level, we will have an accountability label of A, B, or C, if that is the label earned. And if the district earns something lower than a C, we will have a not rated based on Senate Bill 1365. And Senate Bill 1365 is really providing districts a little bit of cushion in areas for accountability based on COVID and overcoming the learning loss. Campuses will also have a label, either an A, B, or C, if that's earned. And if it's not an A, B, or C, our campuses will be not rated for the 2022 school year. Next slide, please. So let's dig just a little deeper into those labels. So again, districts and campuses will each receive an overall rating. So back in 2019, Duncanville ISD had a rating of a B. We had an 84. So we will still have that label, A, B, C, or not rated. And then we will also receive a rating for each one of our domains. On the next slide, I'll walk us through those domains again. If you look at the table on the right, it shows where the scaled score falls for us to receive an A, B, or C for overall, and then each one of the domains. And again, according to Senate Bill 1365, if we do not earn anything above a 70, then we will receive as a district and campuses not rated. Next slide. So state accountability measures is like playing a game of chess or putting puzzles together, right? It's no longer as simple as looking at a score and saying, yes, we have this score, so this is our rating. It's a very complex system. It's based on 3 domains, and we will dig deeper into these domains as our scores come in. But our first domain, domain 1, it's based on student achievement. So we look at the STAR performance, we look at college, career, and military readiness, CCMR, and we look at our graduation rates. So we take domain 1, we add it with domain 2, which is school progress. So not only are we looking at overall student performance, we're looking to see did our students grow. Maybe our students didn't meet the target that was set, but they made progress towards that target. And we receive points for that. Then we look at relative performance. So we look at, or the state looks at, districts that look like Duncanville. And then they compare us with relative performance for economically disadvantaged. So domain 1, student achievement, domain 2, school progress. And they add that with domain 3, closing the gaps. So we're looking overall star performance. Then we go into, are students growing? How are they growing compared to other districts around us? And then the closing the gaps, we dig a little deeper. We look at the academic achievement overall. We look at academic growth overall, our graduation rates. We look at our EL and our bilingual students to see how they're performing. We see how our students are performing over STAR overall, and then we look at our school quality. So when you take all 3 of those domains and you add those together, that will give us our accountability rating for 2022 for the district, and then a rating for the campus. Next slide, please. For 2022, we will continue to have distinctions at the district level and at the campus level. So we will have the opportunity to earn 7 distinctions. 6 of those will be campus only. And then at the district level, we will be able to earn the post-secondary readiness as well as at the campus. And that's focused a lot around our college career military readiness, CCMR. Next slide, please. So now that we see the accountability labels that we will earn, we've looked at the measures, how will we match up to everyone else? Now let's look at where we are with our STAR data. When I first started my presentations with you all, we talked about the COVID learning loss. And then we switched from that COVID learning loss to the COVID climb, right? At some point, we have to move ourselves from the pandemic to overcoming that pandemic. We talked about, in our November, I believe, board meeting about just the deficits for math versus reading, which is totally different for educators. We spend a lot of time focusing in on literacy and focusing in on reading, but our data show that our students in math will have more of a decline, and that's really something that I'm going to make sound easy, but it's not as easy as I'm making it sound. Students in grades pre-K, K1 are learning to read. So once you learn to read and blend sounds together, cat is cat for you. And then moving up to 3rd, 4th, 5th, they're reading to learn. So even if they had a gap year somewhere, they still know how to read. With math, each grade level builds on the previous skill. So it's different than pre-K, K1. I learn math. I can miss a year and just pick back up in 3rd and 4th grade. So as we look at our scores, you'll see a little bit of a shift in our math scores. We predicted that. It's a concern across the state of Texas, but we do have a plan to overcome that learning loss. So we will begin looking at our reading and math scores, grade 3 through 8. Again, these are preliminary scores. In the red, you will see where we are or where we were in 2019. The light blue in 2021, and then the dark blue in 2022. I will tell you, we can spend a lot of time looking at the light blue and then the dark blue and saying, man, look at all that achievement. But we also want to focus on going back to pre-pandemic, right? And making sure that we are achieving and excelling before we had the learning loss. So looking at reading 3 through 8, we saw that in 2019, we were at 72% of our students were at approaches standard and above, and in 2022, grades 3 through 8, we're closing that gap. We're at 66%. Then looking at our math, again, this is where we'll see a bigger decline and a bigger dip. In 2019, 75% of our students were approaching the standard, so they were close to being on grade level and above. But in 2022, we see that 58% of our students. And we've made improvements from 2021, but we know we have a little bit of a ways to go, and that's just filling in the skill gap deficits that our students have from missing instruction. Next slide. So when we look at our science and social studies comparison, the table outlined in red is our 5th and 8th grade science results. We see again in 2019, we were at 69%. 2021, we went down to 52, but we're making that climb up to 58. Science is something similar to math. It's not a concept that you start in pre-K and then you just retain those skills along the way. It is something that is essential to be taught year after year. So we know that, so we're going to have to backload and front load, almost bookend our kiddos to fill in those gaps for sure. And then looking at our 8th grade social studies, in 2019 we were at 58%. 2021 we went down to 40, but we're making our climb back up to 47%. Next slide. So then we look at English 1 and English 2. And if you'll notice, as I start to move into EOCs, you'll see that dotted line going across. The state of Texas has released their comparisons of where the state average is, and so I've added that for our EOCs. So looking at English 1, in 2019, we were at 59%, and the state of Texas was at 63%. In 2021, we were at 58%, and the state of Texas was at 66%. And in 2022, we're at 58%, and the state of Texas is at 63%. So you can see that our scores have been pretty consistent from 2019 through 2022. But one of the things that I would like to point out is we are closing that gap and getting closer to where the state is in English 1. In English 2, again, the dotted line represents the state of Texas. I'd like to point out 2022, we're at 67%, and the state of Texas is at 71%. So again, 2022, we've exceeded our 2019 STAR scores, and we're getting closer to where the state of Texas is. Next slide. Algebra 1 and biology. So Algebra 1, again, we know that math is a deficit area for our students. So in 2019, we were 76%. 2021, 48%, and the state was at 72%. So a large gap between Duncanville, us, and the state of Texas. But in 2022, we're making our way up to 53%, and the state is at 74%. Again, we know that math is an area of concern for us, and we're going to be proactive to ensure that our students have what they need to be successful. And then looking at biology, again, you see the trend of the state average in the dotted line, and then where we are over time. Next slide. Our last EOC score to review is our U.S. history. When you look at Duncanville ISD over time, we've been at 91%, 83%, back up to 89%, and in 2022 for us, we are actually at the state average for U.S. history. Next slide, please. So you're probably thinking, how are we going to address this learning loss? Are the results what we want them to be? I think our answer every time I get up in front of you will be no. They're not what we want them to be. But we know what our students and teachers are capable of. So we have a very focused plan that focuses in two areas. We're measuring progress. We're making sure we know where our students are from the moment they arrive through our doors, and we're checking in on them throughout the year. So we have a MAP growth, which is just a diagnostic. I compare it to when you go to the doctor and you have your vital signs taken, right? You go in, it's either a well check or you're not feeling well, they take your vitals. That's MAP growth for us. It tells us how our students are. Or it's your check engine light on your dash. Somewhere based on that MAP growth data, we have to provide interventions. It tells us exactly what our students need to be successful, and it's our job to implement those things. So we have MAP growth at the beginning of the year. We're offering intervention, we're spiraling curriculum, we're differentiating campus and attendance supports, and then our students take MAP growth again at the middle of the year. So again, vital signs, indicator light, oh, you know what? She's moving, he's doing great, continue with what you're doing. We'll increase intervention time if needed, increase the supports if needed, and then we will take that MAP growth at the end of the year. We will continue to provide summer accelerated learning. As you heard in the superintendent report, it's been well attended and well received, and we'll make sure that our students have what they need year round to be successful. Next slide, please. This concludes my presentation for you at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Jordan. We'll move on to the information discussion. Agenda item B, technology update, Dr. Brian Brown, sorry. I can't read.
Good evening, President McNeely, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. It is my pleasure to provide an update on the Student One-to-One computing program scheduled to begin this fall. As an update, next slide please. As an update on the timeline of the Impact Learning Program, we have completed the majority of the planning process and are currently working through training and preparations for the implementation. We will begin communicating with parents and families next month about the program, and we are currently scheduled to distribute devices this upcoming October. Next slide. There are many opportunities for training for our faculty and staff, beginning with sessions on impact learning this past week at Duncanville U. We had over 100 people attend the sessions during Duncanville U, and we'll continue with opportunities at the upcoming Camp Panther in late July. We're also hosting 2 other training series. The first one is Talking Tech with the IDEA team, which will be offered between the start of school and when the devices are actually distributed in October. And these sessions are going to focus on learning, student, classroom, and device management. These sessions will unpack each one of these areas to build capacity for the teachers and administrators for a successful program. The other opportunity, the Thursday Think Tank with the IDEA team, will occur twice a month for the entire school year, and will focus on skills and tools that support teaching and learning in the one-on-one environment. Next slide. Finally, we're preparing to release the student and parent guide and the campus and teacher playbooks next month. These documents outline the program and provide key guidance for our students, parents, and staff as we move closer to the implementation of the Impact Learning Program. I am happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Questions?
I have a question, Mr. President. So because we're going to one-on-one, we have enough of the internet or the Wi-Fi to help this, or?
So we are installing new Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And as with the video cameras, we've had just like the security cameras, we're having delays. We actually ordered the security cameras last fall. Security cameras, pardon me. The Wi-Fi was ordered last fall. Cisco, our vendor, has not been able to deliver those. They have made changes to the order to get us better equipment, and it is scheduled to be here in late July, early August, with an installation timeline in September. So we will be ready. October 1st is the deadline for the install of the new Wi-Fi. So any reports you might hear about certain areas, the high school maybe not supporting or other campuses not supporting a lot of devices, all of those issues are going to go away with the new equipment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are all the items in the student parent guide, have they already been voted upon and are in the guide already, or will this be something that we'll have to vote on?
Those were all vetted by our Technology Advisory Committee and the Senior Leadership Team.
Is that something we vote on to have in our, no, okay. Okay, all right.
Jackie?
Dr. Brown, so the devices are gonna make it in October?
Yes, ma'am. We will be passing out devices in October.
Okay.
The ones that are not here yet will be here in July. So we'll actually have the devices, we just won't have the wireless infrastructure to give them out.
Okay. Because I think initially we were looking at the beginning of school.
We were looking at September. We were not able to ever put them out in August. It was just because it's our one time to ever do this. With the Impact Learning Program, we're never going to pick the devices up again unless the student leaves the district or various other things. So they'll be keeping them over the summer. So this is our one time to pass them out, and we won't ever have a mass pass out again, except for the pre-K kindergarten students every year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the discussion agenda item C, social and emotional learning update. Dr. Alaska.
Good evening, President McNeely, Dr. Smith, and members of the board. It is our pleasure to present to you this evening an update on our Social Emotional Learning Initiative, or SEL initiative. The commitment and efforts of our counselors this past year has really simply been just outstanding. But this could not have happened without the leadership and support of our Director of Counseling Services, Ms. Shayla Pratt. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Pratt to give you the update for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Halachka. Good evening, President McNeely, Dr. Smith, and members of the board. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share this evening. Next slide, please. As you know, the district has invested in 8 counselors specifically for our students' mental health and social emotional learning. The SEL counselors have 4 primary responsibilities that include providing individual and group counseling, training staff on SEL strategies to implement in the classroom, and responsive services like responding to a suicide or self-harm outcry, or referring students and families to outside counseling service when they need more intensive long-term support. These are the combined numbers of their work throughout the 21-22 school year. Next slide. While we have 8 counselors specific to SEL and mental health, our whole counseling and social work team attends to the mental health and social emotional needs of our students as well. We have 46 counselors and 2 social workers that support students on every campus. The numbers you see here are reflective of the work our campus counselors have done this school year. Next slide. In order to ensure our team keeps up with the latest research and best practices in the field of school counseling, this past year we partnered with several organizations to provide targeted training in areas that will help us more effectively reach our students and families. These are 4 key training the team received this school year. I want to highlight Panorama. Panorama is a program that provides social emotional learning surveys to measure where our students are in their SEL needs. Counselors were trained on how to use the program, analyze student results, and apply a playbook of strategies to build capacity in our students. On the next few slides, I will share with you some of our Panorama survey outcomes. Next slide, please. This school year, 85% of our students completed the Panorama SEL survey in the fall and spring semesters. Students were surveyed on several SEL topics in the fall to include self-efficacy, emotion regulation, social awareness, self-management, and supportive relationships. From our fall survey results, we know that an average of 77% of our students rated supportive relationships with adults at school as being someone they can count on no matter what. This is definitely an indication that we are building positive relationships with students. We also learned that our students' greatest areas of self-identified need were self-efficacy, which we would call self-confidence, and emotion regulation, which would be a student's ability to control their emotions. So for the second semester, these are the 2 competencies our counselors focused on for growth. Next slide. As you can see, we were successful during the 4 months in the second semester of growing students in their self-efficacy or self-confidence by 4% at the elementary and intermediate levels and 2% at the secondary level. Next slide. Unfortunately, we saw a dip in emotion regulation from our 3rd through 5th graders, but a 1% increase in students in grades 6 through 12. This is not surprising, being it was May when students took the survey, and during this time of year, we know our younger students often have more difficulty with regulating their emotions. Next slide. Panorama is one of the many ways in which we proactively work as a team to address students' social emotional needs and prevent further mental health problems. We have discussed most of the supports listed, but one additional one I want to highlight is Youth Mental Health First Aid. This is a training that supports all staff members with recognizing the mental health challenges of our youth. We have provided this in the past, but we'll be expanding this in the upcoming school year to include more of our campus staff. Next slide. We also know that sometimes responding to unfortunate student situations is inevitable. So we've put defined systems in place to ensure we are following best practices with our responsive efforts. From establishing partnerships to protocols, our counselors are equipped and trained to effectively respond to any emotional crisis situation. Listed here are 6 key areas of support. Next slide. I appreciate you providing me the opportunity to give you an overview of the social emotional learning and mental health efforts of our counseling department. This concludes my update, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
So you mentioned that surveys are done from the 3rd through the 12th grade.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just curious, what does a 3rd grade survey look like?
A 3rd grade survey, it's similar to the 6th through 12th grade survey, but the language is amended for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. The vocabulary is put in more in layman's terms so that they can understand it, and our counselors walk them through it and provide dictionaries and clarity on the questions.
Okay, I was just curious because they're so young.
Right.
I wanted to know that they were getting what they needed to express how they felt
Absolutely.
at that time.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any communications from citizens? I would just like to say as we finish that I know that Dr. Smith and his excellent team will crunch the numbers and come up with excellent plans to give our students what they need. We want you to know that we appreciate you and thank you for all the work, and know that we can't pay you for all the hours you put in, so we won't. But we want you to know we appreciate you. Meeting adjourned.